Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark DeVoe, and Mr. Stay and I have been recovering from our hangovers from our 5th anniversary last week. Thank you again to everyone who came along to that. But it's great to be back. We are now officially in our sixth year, our 6th season. So welcome. And we want to thank everyone. Yes, we're still here, folks. It wasn't a big announcement last week that we were going to end the podcast. We're doing it at least for another week, aren't we, Mark? No, we've got tons of great stuff coming over the next year. And we'd like to thank all of our patrons, everyone who supported this show. It is because of you that we are here. It is because of you that we can get this podcast out to many, many thousands of writers. So thank you again. And if you would like to join that bunch of merry, merry writers, if you have ever felt that the podcast has given you something, lifted your day, given you a bit of inspiration, kept you writing, started you writing, please come and support the podcast. It's very simple. You go to bestsellerexperiment.com/support. And also thank you to all our Academy members. And Mark, we've just done a quick interview. Well, a quick interview. It's a brilliant interview with Mark Hood that we're going to be putting out as an Academy All-Stars special for everyone in the world to listen to about his incredible writing streak. Do we put a teaser or a spoiler in as to how many days he's currently been writing for, or should we wait for it comes out?
No, you got to wait. I mean, these Academy All-Star episodes, we do these infrequently. You know, we do this when one of our academates does something extraordinary. And Mark, I mean, look, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that Mark Hood has an extraordinary writing streak. But not just that, he's taken this 200 word a day thing, and he's just sussed it. He's absolutely sussed it. And if you want to get into that writing habit and don't want to hear us just keep banging on about it every week, and here's someone who's actually done it and has been incredibly productive and is very cool about it as well, then do check that out. It should be coming out a couple of days after this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you want to try the 200 word challenge, it's 200wordchallenge.com. And you can, once you've heard this interview, I think you will be very, very convinced of not just actually, there's a lot of extra stuff that I didn't expect over and above just the word count, which we really delve into. So do not miss that. It's a fantastic interview. But talking of fantastic things happening, Mark, there's all kinds of crazy, amazing things happening right now. None less than a certain box that has arrived in your household, I believe, this week.
It's here. My book is here. Ooh, let me smell it. Oh, the smell of it. Yes. Composure. My second Witches of Woodville book, Babes in the Wood, has arrived. It arrived in a lovely big box the other day, and I ripped it open and then thought, oh no, I need to do an unboxing video. So we've been out.
Strapped it back up. Did you get the tape out?
Well, you know, I don't do these things by halves. So we were actually out in the local woods at dusk last night, basically shooting a short horror movie. And I've seen a rough cut of it. And actually, by the time this episode goes live, we should be out of post-production, and it should be available for all. And I've got to say that my daughter Emily and her fella Kaya have excelled themselves this time. The VFX on this, I kid you not, for an unboxing video is out of this world. So I'm very, very happy with that.
You're setting a whole new standard here, Mark, aren't you? Everyone's going to be like, well, how are we going to follow that? But it's almost like you're having to now follow your own unboxing videos. You have, by the time you've written your kind of like 10th in the series, Mark, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be like, George Lucas is going to be directing. You're going to have extras in the background.
Well, the next one, I don't want to say too much about it, but the next one features a ghost. So we're already having conversations about how we do that.
I can only imagine. I'm very apt around this time of year as well. But congratulations. I mean, you know, these are massive moments in our journey as writers,
Never
right?
Gets old. Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant.
And here's the thing. They're still putting specials on the cover. My publisher still loves me, you know.
Is it special? Is it a kind of embossed title?
Yeah, embossed, and a little bit of gloss on there as well. Spot
nice.
Lamb. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the other treat I got today as well is they sent me the files for the audiobook, which is read by Candida Gubbins, who did the first one, who is just amazing. Then this book has so many accents in it. Okay, you've got Faye herself, who's like, you know, Kent, and got that kind of, you know, cheeky chirpy accent, but you've got German in here, you've got Bavarian, very specific Bavarian accent. you've got Scots, you've got Cockneys, you've got all sorts in it. And she's invented a few of her own as well. There's a character. What I love about Candidate and any audiobook narrator is when they just take something and they make it their own. And because there's one character I've got, and they're just a few lines, and she's made him Welsh. I just love it. See, I didn't write him as Welsh, but he's now Welsh, and forever will be Welsh in my head. It's just wonderful.
I love it. So for all of the people who have that kind of inner imp inside themselves, as you're writing your book, this might be your first ever book, but you will one day have an audiobook version of it. So have some fun with the narrator. Like put some stuff. Have some fun with it. Like make it interesting for them.
Cursing because I've got
I've
got people speaking German in here as well, which is a difficult language to get your head around if you're unfamiliar with it. So
my mum was a German teacher, and I used to hear it around the house all the time. That guttural kind of like sound. My mum used to she was really specific about pronunciation. Being a German teacher, if I would say something wrong, she'd always say, "Oh, people who say ich, it's ich, not ich, Heiber. And she used to drive her nuts. Probably still does, Mum. I know Mum listens to the podcasts every now and again. So hello, Mum. But German, like go for it. German, chuck in a bit of Chinese, Japanese. Like have some fun with your narrators. They will love you forever, folks, and you get the last laugh.
They
literally.
like a challenge. They like
absolutely,
a challenge.
New podcast challenge for season 6. And Mark, so there's that happening, but there's also tons of events happening as well. You seem to be in demand now as an event hoster. I think
sit down, dear listener. Get a pen and paper. Get your diary out. Dates for your diary. So, this is coming out on the Monday. So the Thursday of this week, Thursday the 28th, I'm doing a live launch show as we did with the 5th anniversary, 5th birthday. So it's going to be on StreamYard, it's going to be on Facebook and YouTube, and a friend of the podcast, Mr. Queeve McDonald, will be co-hosting and master of ceremonies, and we'll be having all sorts of fun. We'll be announcing the winner because I'm doing my usual book and chocolate giveaway on Twitter at the moment, so we'll be announcing the winner of that as well, and having all sorts of fun. So that's Thursday the 27th, 7 p.m. BST. Yes, go.
I've said this before as well, but if you want to see how to do a book launch, if you want to get inspiration, go to Mr. Stay's. They're absolutely brilliant. I mean, they're getting more and more like, talking about your VFX on the videos here, but the productions now of these book launches with the technology that you can get very cheaply now, right? It's not like you're paying ridiculous, but like when we did our 5th anniversary, it was like we were joking about it feels like a TV broadcast. Yeah. So come and watch it, because even if you just want to see how Mark does it, I remember coming to your last one and I was like, this is brilliant. I love it.
We'll see. There's plenty of room for disaster. So that's Thursday 27th. On Friday the 29th, I'm in conversation with none other than Mr. Ben Aronovich at Waterstones in Canterbury. So that's a live in-store event. So if you happen to be in Canterbury, in Kent, the Waterstones there. Tickets are selling like hotcakes, absolutely flying out. Actually, is a nice little insight into what it's like to be a best-selling author who puts on events. So that's selling really, really fast. And then on Saturday the 30th, I'm doing a thing with the Canterbury Fringe on how to get published. So myself and a couple of other authors will be talking about how to get published, either as indie or traditionally, and answering your questions on that. That's at the Rock Paper Scissors store. And on Sunday, I'm having a lie-in, which is ironic because the clocks go forward.
Right. I was going to say, and Sunday is the special event of sleeping for 24 hours. Brilliant stuff.
But I'll put links in the show notes for all of that stuff so you can find that nice and easily.
Excellent. And best of luck with all those, Mark. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm sure you'll give us a kind of an update. I can't wait to hear how the Ben Aronovich interview goes. And now that he's in the hot seat, rather than us being in the hot seat, I'm sure there'll be a few references to that infamous episode many, many eons ago that we did with Ben. Another thing that we want to mention as well, in case you didn't hear the 5th anniversary, and if you missed it, please go and have a listen because it was brilliant. And if you actually came to the live, like we did a live event where everyone could actually show up a few days before it went actually live online. But Mark, we had some, I was quite blown away actually. When it got edited, we had about 7, 8, 9 former guests from the podcast drop us some messages which our editors kind of slipped in between.
Yeah. So if you listen to the recording, you get bonus material, and it was really, really sweet. And actually, I had a couple of authors get in touch when it was the deadline had passed, saying, "Oh, can we leave a message?" I'm like, "It's too late. Maybe next year." So it was very sweet, but they said very sweet things about us as well. So, but yeah, we got little birthday messages all the way through. But I think it's the first one on the episode from Kylie Dunbar. And this is so sweet, and I had no idea about this. She said that she named characters after you and me. So in the book, I think it's Borrow a Bookshop Holiday, there's an Elliot DeVoe.
I know. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Actually immortalised as a hero in a romance novel. Doesn't get better than that, does it, really?
And at Matchmaking at Port Willow, there's a Mark Firth, okay, which is very sweet. But I got the mark and you got the surname, which reminds me, because, when we were doing Back to Reality, we were talking about maybe combining our names. And I said, yeah, we'll use your mark and my stay.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that conversation. I'm like, yeah, that's that. Hang on. How about we do your first name and my last name? Oh, that's brilliant. But thank you so much to all the authors that sent us messages. It was so heartwarming. And I literally almost welled up when I was listening to the podcast. We listen to the podcast ourselves. It's kind of a bit weird, but we do. I mean, usually to make sure that there's nothing inappropriate that hasn't been taken out. But I must admit, Kylie, when I heard your message, it actually made me think, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And the only reason, Mark, I can imagine why I got the romance hero is it probably has something to do with some kind of French ancestral background, and my surname has that kind of like. So it's probably nothing personal, but Kylie, you're forever in my heart for that. And I have to go read this book now. I mean, this is a thing, right? This is a great way of put some authors in, because I want to go read that book and find out what this Elliot DeVoe gets up to, what shenanigans he gets himself into. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Well, and so yeah, if you missed that, if you came to the live, do listen to the rerun. On iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all good. And actually, you know what? We haven't told a lot of people. We put it in the newsletter. But if you say to your Alexa or your Google Mini or Home or whatever other ones there are out there, hey, Google, play the Bestseller Experiment podcast, it plays the latest episode. It's absolutely brilliant.
You've just fired up all these little Google boxes all over the world.
Yeah.
You know that, don't you?
Yeah,
hey, Alexa, play the Bestseller Experiment podcast.
Suddenly all across the house. I was like, what the hell's going on? Your kids are in their bedrooms trying to play their video games, and suddenly it's like, da-na-na-na-na. It's like, what's this?
It's a shame Patreon doesn't have the same thing, is it? Hey, Patreon, subscribe to the top tier of the Bestseller Experiment podcast. Ka-ching.
Hey, Alexa, order 20,000 copies of Back to Reality. Oh dear. But you can do that. You can actually order a book on Alexa. Have you ever tried that, Mark?
I won't allow Alexa in the house for that very reason.
We do. We have our entire house rigged up with actually Google Homes and Minis. So we're I listen to podcasts constantly on them, go from one room to the other. It's brilliant. But try that out, folks. It's really good fun. Just ask to play the latest episode, or you can even say episode blah, or the episode with Ben Aronovich. That might even work as well on some of those devices. So if there's an episode you want to kind of catch up on, or you haven't heard, or you want to re-listen to, try that as well. But it's really, really, really great. Couple other things to mention before we dive into this double header interview that we've got this week, which I'm really excited about. Thank you to everyone who has already pledged to buy Back to Reality hardback, because we announced this on our 5th. We've had a ton of people. We're getting closer and closer to this total, which will trigger. We need to get 100 orders for that book, or pledges, and then we're going to actually put everyone's names in the book, in the back of the book, and we're going to create a hardcover edition of the book and tell you all how to order it. So if you would like to be a part of that, please pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/Back to Reality, and there'll be details there on how you can order it. And for anyone, we talked about audiobooks earlier, Mark, as well, didn't we? But we are running a very special competition, which you should remind everyone of. Yeah,
just sign up to the newsletter and you're entered into a draw to win one of 3 free copies of the Back to Reality audiobook, which is as much fun as you can possibly have with your clothes on. It's just fantastic. Again,
Absolutely.
Kim Breton, amazing narrator. I'm in awe of audiobook narrators, and she was just terrific. Absolutely terrific.
Absolutely. So if you want to enter for that competition, you simply go to the website and click on the newsletter tab. Right, enough about all that. Let's get down to the good stuff, Mark. Let's find out more about our two incredible guests today, Alan Gillespie and Emma Grae.
Yes, well, these are two Scottish authors, and they're both Unbound authors. And as you know, I was an Unbound author of my book, The End of Magic, and Unbound is the crowdfunding publisher. And Alan's book is The Mash House, and the shout line is Secrets, Death and Malt Whiskey. And Alan is a writer and English teacher from Fife, Scotland, and The Mash House is this thriller set in an isolated community. Great characters, great story, great whiskey. Emma Grae, and Emma, you'll have to, and all of Scotland and anyone Scottish around the world, and I'm going to apologise in advance for the accent, but she's written it in Scottish vernacular, including the title. So the title is Be Good to Your Mammy. Again, apologies there, which is about Kate, who wants to be a screenwriter, and her grandmother, who nearly became a film star in her youth. And as I said, it's written in that Scottish vernacular. So we talk about voices, both those of authors and characters who might otherwise have been overlooked. What to do when you write in a language that makes copy editing nearly impossible. Writing without quotation marks for dialogue, and the whole crowdfunding experience. It's a hell of a chat.
Wonderful stuff. So let's dive in and listen to Mr. Stay speaking to none other than Alan Gillespie and Emma Grae.
Alan Gillespie and Emma Grae, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you both today?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
Very good. This is why we rarely have two authors on. It'll be just barge in, overlap, say what you want. It's all cool. But I'm delighted to have you both on the show. And I wanted you on here because you have a lot in common, but your books are very, very different. And I'd love to hear about your experiences. But Alan, your book, The Mash House, was published in May of 2021. And Emma Grae, Be Good to Your Mammy, was published in August. And they were both part of Unbound. I myself am an Unbound author, and I've been through the whole crowdfunding thing. I'd love to talk about that and all the kind of surprises that came out of that. And also, I've just seen you have both been getting the most extraordinary reviews and coverage. And I just want to talk about your writing journey. So, Alan, let's start with you. Tell us about The Mash House.
The Mash House is my debut book. It's a tartan noir in the footsteps of the great William McIlvanney and all of the other Scottish crime and writers of darkness and creepy stories. It's not really a police procedural as such. I kind of see it as being a little bit more like, do you know the film and the TV series Fargo, which is I guess kind of a thriller kind of thing. Yeah, that was really a big inspiration for me. I really wanted to transplant that kind of small town creepy atmosphere into a Highland village, and it kind of centres around a whiskey distillery, and there's just various dodgy characters and dark, evil deeds taking place.
Sounds fantastic. And Emma, tell us about Be Good to Your Mammy. This is quite a different book, isn't it? I love the sound of this.
Very different book, yeah. So Be Good to Your Mammy is a book about a very questionable Glaswegian grandmother who has a little bit more to her than meets the eye. And it's a book, I never realised this, but I've actually unintentionally been working on this book since 2011 in a completely different form. So I used to work in a care home way back when, after I left high school in 2011, my mum was like, get a job, ended up in a care home in Glasgow. And, I learned more there than I did at Strathclyde, not going to lie. And that was sort of where it came from. And people spoke in Scots there. It was such an unintentional, I know there's such a movement in Scots literature right now. At no point was this planned. This was very much in the works a long time before but what ended up being really nice about this book is that it's women's voices in Scots. And as far as I'm aware, there isn't really many of them out there, least of all a book voiced by 4 of them.
Voices, it's something we love to talk about on this podcast because, since self-publishing and platforms like Unbound have come along, the ability to get voices that might otherwise have been overlooked by traditional publishing is, the opportunities there like never before. And you've both chosen very distinct styles and voices for your books, which I'd love to talk about now. Emma, yours is written in the Scottish vernacular. And I think, the most famous examples are probably Irving Welsh, Trainspotting, James Kelman, How Late It Was, How Late, Alan Warner's Morven Callar. And I remember I was just reading Douglas Stewart, who won for Shuggie Bain. He said that Kelman inspired him. He said, I saw my people, my dialect on the page, and that inspired him. Why did you want to write in the Scottish vernacular for your book?
I'm going to be honest with you. I hadn't read any Scots books, like apart from like Burns and like I loved Still Game growing up. Don't get me wrong, that was like I was obsessed with it. My grandpa loved it. I thought it was great, but it was just the way that people spoke. As soon as I was going to write an old Scottish person, it was in Scots. It was as simple as that. But as I like got into it, it came so much more easy to me than writing in English ever did, and it was just so natural. It wasn't really like a choice. But I will say, in terms of voicing 4 of them, that was a really specific influence, and it wasn't a Scots book actually. It was a book called House Mother Normal by B.S. Johnson. It's set in a care home. It's an experimental novel, and there's like a house mother who's like the main narrator. I might be misremembering this because I read it about 8 years ago, but each of the chapters is voiced by a different person in the care home. And that was where the idea of voices came. But I obviously took that idea and applied it to a family across generations. And initially, quite a few of my characters, it was just Granny who was in Scots. And at the very beginning, it wasn't even full Scots. But I realised that was the right way to do it and started properly writing in Scots. And then after the book was finished, I rewrote the younger generation and her daughter. So what's quite cool about Be Good to Your Mammy is that every character's language is different depending on their age and their social standing. And that includes the spellings. So Granny will use hink with an H and the younger generation will be think with an F. And then these were all, it was difficult. It was hard to get this right and consistent. It was, I'm moving on to the second print and trying to just be like, right, this was never going to be 100% because there's no such thing as a Scots proofreader or an editor. They just don't exist. There's no Scots dictionary. It's very much off your own ear and off your own back. But I'm really glad I did it because I certainly haven't seen anything like it before.
It's interesting you bring that up because, we're all in the Unbound. There's an Unbound Facebook group for authors. And I did see you, Emma, sort of fretting about typos. And I'm there going, well, everyone has a couple of typos. But, once I saw the book and saw it was in the Scottish vernacular, I thought, oh, gosh, there's a whole other level of responsibility there to get that right, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Like each character had their own little list on my computer of how they were going to use each word and each rule for each character. And I think no one has pointed out any errors in the first edition. I know they're there, but no one has said anything, which is great. And I don't think they will because I'm pretty sure we're kind of running out of books at this stage, which is good. So it's fine. I got away with it.
Alan, your book is written in a brilliant prose style. There's no punctuation on the dialogue. It reminds me of people like Cormac McCarthy, and I think Sally Rooney does the same thing as well, which is a really wonderful choice. What made you go for that particular style?
I was influenced by McCarthy and Rooney, like you say, and also another American writer called Kent Herif, who is a sensational writer. I don't know. I mean, I just wanted to write the kind of book that I like to read. And I like books that don't use quotation marks for dialogue attribution. And I've been asked this a few times, so I have had an opportunity to think about it. One of the reasons I like it is because I like the aesthetics on the page of just the words. Whenever I've been reading a book that doesn't use speech marks, and then I look at a page that's cluttered with speech marks, it feels incredibly heavy and it feels kind of messy and it doesn't look very pleasing to my eye. So, from one point of view, it's purely a kind of personal snobbery kind of thing. And also, just from a kind of storytelling perspective, we don't use quotation marks when we're talking to each other. Emma was saying there that she worked in a care home and people were saying this to her and people were saying that to her. We don't need speech marks to understand that what she's telling us is dialogue. Like, we get it, it's fine, it's human conversation, and that kind of oral storytelling tradition, I quite like that. Obviously, there's a wee risk at times. It can be, it can be tricky to tell the difference between dialogue and the narrative perspective. But as long as you're careful, you should be able to steer clear of any big issues like that. But yeah, Sally Rooney is probably going to sell about 5 billion books this year with our new one coming out. Cormac McCarthy, I'm sure, does fine. So there's plenty of writers that have shown that you don't need speech marks in order to attract a readership. And the other reason really is it's 100,000 words long. Mash House, a big chunky book. And when I got to the end of the process and we'd gone through the character edits and looking at the plot and all of that kind of stuff, I said to my editor, look, do you think it's okay to go ahead without the speech marks here? And they said, yeah, it's fine. Do you want to go back and add in speech marks to your 100,000 word book? And obviously I did not. So we just went with it.
Brilliant. That's as good an excuse I've ever heard. Why did you both choose Unbound? Did either of you think about either the traditional route or the self-publishing route? Emma, was it always going to be something like Unbound for you?
It's hilarious. Unbound was the first publisher I ever had contact with. I'm one of the OGs because Unbound, they began back in 2011, and that was when I was really seriously trying to write. But I was 17 and just didn't know what I was doing. I had good ideas, but was terrible at what I was doing because I was just straight out of school. And I think at that age, you try and be everybody apart from who you're meant to be. It wasn't actually until I went to Trinity College. And actually a little bit before Trinity, at Strathclyde I did start getting into my stride, but Trinity sort of gave me the confidence to do it. But I used to post my writing on a website called Jotify. It doesn't exist anymore, but it used to be a place where writers could go on and share short stories and novel extracts. And when it's really funny because I found out about that website through high school through someone who I don't like very much. And I'm like, thanks for that, man, because I ended up getting published 10 years later by this publisher. Cheers. That worked quite well for me. And they were looking for a book. And this guy called Edward Higgins had posted the start of a book called Conversations with Spirits, which is one of Unbound's earlier works. And it had 15,000 readers and stuff. So that was back in 2011. And the internet was big back then, but definitely not what it is now. And so I knew about Unbound, and I remember being quite jealous, oh, he get a book published. And he added me on Facebook, so I saw the process of him crowdfunding it as well. I had no idea how much money it was. That was the one thing I didn't know. And then another guy from the website, so we all sort of became friends on Twitter through knowing each other through this website. Another guy called Paul Holbrook. He also wrote the kind of horror historical novel. He got picked up by Unbound a couple of years later. And at this point, I was doing my master's degree and had decided that I wanted to write a novel. So this would have been 2015 because I started writing Mammy in 2015. I'd sort of been doing a lot of short stories and memoir type stuff before then. And again, I was like, I would like to do that. And then as part of my master's, I got to do a publishing module. And we did an investigation into the publishing industry because it was an MPhil. And naturally, Unbound, it was what I'd seen happen. So I came down to London. It was 2 days after David Bowie died. That's in Mammy, because it was I'm such a big Bowie fan, evidenced by the wall behind me. And I came down, interviewed Unbound, went to their office, and I was just talking to them about Unbound. And I was yeah, I've got a book, and I'm I have thought about it, because I was asking the questions of how much money do you need to raise? That was my question, and I knew how much money was needed. And then Mammy ended up finally being finished in 2018, and I'd sort of tinkered with editing it, but I'd never tried to get an agent. None of that stuff had happened just because I'd been publishing short stories here and there. And then one day in work, I was feeling kind of down and decided I was just going to send it to Unbound. But when we were doing the whole submission process, I was like, I know these guys. I know who I'm sending it to. So I sent it off, but I didn't think they'd take it because I did think that my manuscript, I thought it's in 4 voices and it's in Scots. There's a million reasons not to take this book because it is niche. And at that point, there were the whole revival in Scots literature. No one knew about it. That was on no one's radar back then. And then in January 2019, they were like, yeah, we'd love to crowdfund it. And my mom, again, had known about Unbound through talking with me. And I was like, come hell or high water, I'm finding that money. I knew how much money I needed, and I knew how to build an audience on social media. And then I had actually spoken to literary agents and stuff. So after I crowdfunded it, I was sort of told by an agent what as an agent they look for in terms of social media following, what kind of following they do. And I was fortunate that I was able to build that largely after funding, weirdly, because of the whole big Scots, is it a language, is it not? I kind of won points by being controversial, which I don't mind.
Fantastic. Alan, why did you choose Unbound? And again, did you explore any other publishing avenues before you approached them?
To be honest, it's all Emma's fault. Honestly, I never heard of Unbound. I was using Twitter mainly as an English teacher to kind of network with other teachers, and also I was writing a little bits of short fiction here and there. So I was following lots of Scottish teachers and writers and things like that. And I was following Emma on Twitter. And
I didn't know this.
Yeah, and she'd been, obviously posting about her crowdfunding, and I'd kind of looked at the Unbound's website, having seen Emma on there, and I was consumed with jealousy. I just thought, that looks awesome. I want to be doing that as well. So I didn't have a book written at all. I had about 8,000 words, I think, and I sent Unbound a couple of chapters. I can't remember what the criteria was. A few chapters. I made up a synopsis for this unfinished book, and just obviously forgot about it. And then 6 months later, they got back in touch and said, "Okay, cool, we'll take it." And I was kind of surprised, and I messaged Emma at that point and said, "Look, what's the chat? What's it like working with them? What kind of stuff have you been doing, and what's working and what isn't?" And also said to Unbound, the book isn't finished. And they said, "Oh, that's okay. As long as it's finished by the time your crowdfunding's finished, then that works for us." So they obviously liked, the sample chapters and the synopsis that I'd sent over. And I just found that really validating and really encouraging. And I just thought, if these guys like it, I'd be stupid to... It would have been really easy to turn around and say, "I'm sorry, the book isn't finished. Give me a year and I'll get back to you." And I just thought, this is a wee chance to do something that wasn't really happening for me without Unbound being there. So I had to go for it. And Emma was a really great, confident all the way through crowdfunding. We were messaging each other quite regularly, when we were feeling pissed off or when we were feeling really happy. "Oh my God, you'll never guess what happened. Oh, I'm furious. This has happened." And we've never met each other. This is the closest we've got to meet. So, we'll need to go out for a couple of cocktails sometime, Emma.
Definitely. I didn't even know that was how you saw it. I think it's kind of funny though. So many Unbound authors have all seen each other. Like, we've seen one campaign and then someone else has jumped on it as a kind of way of doing it themselves, which is really interesting. Because Edward, been friends with him on Facebook for 10 years. Have I met him? No, apparently we passed each other, and we must have passed each other on the tube by now, but we've just never met.
Alan, that thing of sending it off and then waiting for 6 months and kind of forgetting it, and then they got in touch. Had you continued to write the book in those 6 months? Did you continue working on it?
No, I was just teaching. I was teaching classes. I was writing a couple of wee educational features every now and then, but really, as a fiction writer, I was in hibernation. So that was why when they made the offer, I had a bit of a dilemma about whether or not I should go for it. And obviously I'm glad that I decided to stick my neck out and take the risk.
Yeah, there's nothing like a deadline to put a fire up your bum, is there, eh?
Well, exactly. Yeah, that did the job for me, yeah.
Let's talk about the crowdfunding experience in a bit more detail. Emma, you were talking about, you know how to build up a social media following and that sort of thing. I saw your pledge video, which I loved, because one, you fluffed a line, and two, your cat made a cameo. Which
flatmate's cat, actually.
Oh, okay.
Sadly, it's not mine.
And also, you have to do different pledges. You can have your name in the back of the book, and you can do this. Your top level was a Horcrux level pledge. Can you tell us about that as well?
I didn't think anyone would take it, but someone actually did. And then I have to decide, I'm not going to say what it is. I've worked out what the Horcrux is. It's not actually my soul, but I'm in the process of arranging it now, because I was like, I'm going to actually have to work out what that was, because people keep asking me about it. And I was like, I didn't think anyone would pick that one. And a distant family member took a really high pledge, which was lovely of her, and was really fortunate just the way it worked out in terms of getting the support. But I didn't get as much in the initial stages, never had as many pledgers as Alan. I don't think I knew enough people, basically. I think I crowdfunded with 120 supporters, which wasn't a huge amount. I was quite fortunate that I'd had been left a little bit of money. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to shove in and push the campaign over the edge, which is what I did. And don't regret it for a second, because I actually ended up getting a job with the Scots Language Centre as soon as the book funded. They commissioned me to write in Scots for them, and that more than paid for everything that was invested in terms of pushing the Unbound book over the edge. And that's been brilliant in terms of making connections and finding a bigger audience for the book. So I think it's difficult though, because me and Alan were on the digital list of Unbound. I know that the main list is a lot more money than what we had to raise. And if I'd been on the main list, I don't know if I could have found that kind of money, basically.
Yeah. There is. I'm on the digital list too, and I mean, when I was doing it, it was about $5,500. I think. I suspect it's probably. Is it about the same now, or has it gone up?
It was the same for us too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I mean, I don't. Alan, how did you sort of work on your crowdfunding? Were you very strategic about it, or how did that work for you?
I was strategic at times, and other times it was just a complete scattergun, Wild West kind of approach. I was quite fortunate working in a school. Lots of the parents and pupils at the school, well, once they found out about it, lots of them were quite happy to pledge and buy a book and get the name in. And that's been great, because since the book's been published, lots of the kids have been bringing their book in and asking me to sign it for them and stuff like that. So I really like that part of being a teacher who's a writer and being able to kind of model that people can be writers, and it isn't just Richard Osman who's getting away with it. But I also had a really just hectic, systematic harassment of literally anyone I'd ever met in my life. Emails, texts, messages, Facebook requests out of the blue. I'm sure everyone was absolutely sick to the back teeth of hearing about it. And it was hard work. Like, it was really hard work. And I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know if I literally would be successful doing it again, because I kind of feel that the first time you do it, there's a wee bit of a novelty there. Oh, let's buy a book and help Alan get a book published. But sitting in it, well, we've done that already. Surely you can do it yourself this time. So I don't know. I found the crowdfunding really tough, but every time you got an extra wee percentage on your total, it was a wee boost. You get a wee adrenaline buzz, you get a wee G up, and puts a bit of wind underneath you. And I do like the connection and the bond that it can build between readers and the writer. There's lots of readers of my book that I didn't know before, but I now kind of know them a bit online, or we follow each other, and I'm pretty accessible. They can message me and we'll have a chat about it. I do like that side of Unbound's model a lot.
Yeah, I had quite the same experience. It was I had a spreadsheet, and it was like, I've contacted them once, contacted them twice, after 3 times, But yeah, and I'm glad I did it once. And I'm glad I did it, and you have that special connection. But I'm kind of glad I don't have to do it again, because it's like if you've ever worked in an office and there's always one person who's doing like a 5K run and raising money for charity, you'll do it once, maybe twice, and start. Oh God, why just set you up on a direct debit or something? It does lose its novelty. But Alan, I was looking at your pledge levels, and you had one where you can name the dog and you can name the priest, and you were careful to note that the dog doesn't die, which is important, although I do know you might lose a few cat lovers on page 1 of your book. But how did naming characters, that was something I did, and they were the first ones to go straight away. Was that the experience for you?
Yeah, it was actually my former head teacher bought the dog. Her name's Dr. Laura Murphy. Hi, Laura, if you're watching. And the dog's called Murphy in her honour. And she basically said to me, what do you want to call it? I said, well, it's up to you, but how about this? And she was happy with that. Just on the note about the cat, Mark.
Yes. The
cat's dead before the book begins. Okay, I don't kill that cat.
So it's not your fault.
I am absolved of all blame. I just deal with the body. And the other, there was another couple of characters, like one of my best mates from back home. I named a couple of the characters after him and his father. And there was the naming of the priest. I've got no idea who bought that or what the priest's name means in the book. They just I just got an email from Unbound to say this is what you have to call your priest, and I was kind of like, cool, works for me.
Right.
So yeah, these things are weird and wonderful, and you don't get them, I assume, in most other publishing journeys. So I enjoyed that kind of quirky side to the Unbound stuff.
On the subject of quirky, I had the weirdest pledger possibly ever. I still don't know who did it. I went on once and like checking the campaign, and someone had pledged under Jacob Christopher Rad, and I'm like, who's that? And then I googled it. It was the guy who invented the sugar cube, who died about 200 years ago. And he bought like a 12-copy option, and I was like, what? Who? Then like I went on like a hunt to try and work out. I still don't know who it was. I honestly have no clue who this person was, but they have 12 copies of my book apparently.
Brilliant. Why not? Let's talk about, because you're both debut authors, and I've loved seeing your posts on the Unbound group on Facebook. The astonishment and the surprises. I mean, Emma, on Twitter, I saw you signing in Sockhill Street the other day, which is the bookshop, the big Waterstones in Sockhill Street. Alan, I saw you were at Bloody Scotland in Stirling, where I believe you studied, so you've got all these wonderful surprises. What have been the big upsides to all of this for you?
You want to go first, Emma? I'll need to have a think.
I think signing it was great. That was amazing. I think, I guess being like, I feel like I've kind of established something now. I feel like I've established myself as a voice within the Scots writing community. I've already been approached by a publisher for another book of mine, which is great. So I know that I can do this again. This is just a case of when and getting the story right, which is amazing. And it's just good to know I'll be able to do it again, because I think for a very long time, I always sort of, the goal was publish a novel. That was all I ever wanted to do in my life. And then I did it. And then you kind of sit sort of with that, what's next? But it's been really nice that my book I did not know how my book would be received, because it's a comedy as well. And I wasn't sure if people would find it funny or, and it does deal with serious themes. So it's quite a complicated book, and I wasn't sure how it would go down with readers. It's gone down a lot better than I thought it would, especially with men, because I thought, this book's told by the voices of 4 women. Will any men actually want to read it? And I've been totally surprised at how many men have enjoyed it and really recommended it to people, which has been great. So it's been a real confidence boost, but I still feel like I'm on the journey with it, because from writing, I started writing October 2015 when I moved to Ireland, finished it in 2018, but it took, I was supposed to come out the same time as Alan, but didn't, because I delayed it, because I have OCD, and that made it a million times harder, along with the fact that I was dealing with such a complex book to edit. It was really hard, because I just wanted to make sure that I was letting it go in as good a shape as I could. And I know I did. And I was obviously grateful that it's sold well enough that I can sort of go back and fix the stuff that I want to fix. But yeah, it was great going in and signing it. And I had such a good publication day, and so far haven't been really trolled, which is surprising, because I'm sort of used to it as the journalist. I thought that they were going to come for me. I mean, they will come for me, but they haven't done it yet, which has been nice. I feel like I've had a nice month.
Isn't that just a damning indictment of the 21st century? They will come for me sooner or later. Well, look, Emma, we'll be there by your side when they do. Don't you worry. Alan, what were the big surprises and upsides for you for Mash House?
I don't know. I mean, the big upsides for me have been just the really cliched things, like seeing it in bookshops, seeing people you don't know reading it. Because obviously I knew my granny would read it, and I knew my dad would read it, and they would tell me it was good and all the rest of it. But the strangers reading it and enjoying it, that has been incredibly rewarding. I'm a really, really envious person, really envious of other people's success. I like people to be successful, but not any more successful than me usually. So for years, I was friends with some writers, and I would be in and out of bookshops, and I would go to book festivals and things like that. And for years, I would go to these things, really happy to be there and to see whoever was doing their stuff. But a wee part of me felt sick with jealousy. So seeing my own book in the shops, getting to go and do a couple of wee book festival events, signing my book for the kids that have been bringing it in, there's a really great group on Instagram called the Scottish Book Club, and we did a big kind of online book group chat with them a couple of weeks ago. all of these things have just been like beyond more exciting than I thought they ever would be, to be honest. I thought the book would come out and I would go very modestly, yeah, that's fine. But I am like milking it as much as I can. I definitely feel the kind of I feel the desire to do it again. I've got another book that I've drafted and I'm working on that, and I've spoken to a couple of agents and publishers kind of half-heartedly. So yeah, I've definitely got the bug and would like to see it happen again at some point.
No, as would we all. I mean, it's and you should just love those moments when they come along, those signings, those little moments, seeing your book on the shelf. You know, they are moments to cherish, and it never gets old. I can tell you that. It's just fantastic. Well, Alan and Emma, we're gonna have to wrap it up there. I normally ask what's next, but you've both got, you're both working on new books, which is just fantastic. And folks, if you want The Mash House or Be Good to Your Mammy, available everywhere. So, grab a copy. They are extraordinary. Believe the hype. The reviews are just amazing. And two really unique voices, which, again, without publishers like Unbound and platforms like Unbound might never have got out there into the world, which we should be forever grateful for that. So, Alan and Emma, thank you so much for speaking to me. I sincerely hope to speak to you both here again really soon.
Thank you
so much.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. I love double header interviews. These Alan and Emma, I mean, amazing. They never met each other, but they had this incredible chemistry, didn't they?
Great,
incredible chemistry.
Yeah.
It's like they'd been kind of buddies for years. But what an incredible story, and two very, very different stories, but all kind of pulled together by this idea of crowdfunding. It must have brought back a lot of memories for you, Mark. Because how many years is it since you did End of Magic as Unbound now? It's couple, isn't it?
3 years, 3 years maybe. Yeah, it must be 3 years because I was still at Orion. And that was it was hard. I won't pretend but it was a fun to it. There was that thing of having a target, and every day I would try and get at least one pledge a day kind of thing, and some days were better than others. And as I said to Alan and Emma, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I did it once. I'm glad I don't have to do it again. It is hard. It is really, really hard, but good fun and very satisfying. And it gets your book out there. They can't take that away from you.
This is the thing, is that no matter how much work goes into it, we know that publishing a book, there is a certain level of a commitment you're going to have to take on, even if you're with a traditional publisher, in terms of, getting out there, talking about it, doing interviews. But the thing I love about any kind of model, whether it's Unbound or just like Jan Carr, one of our Academy members, she did with crowdfunding on Kickstarter, Indiegogo. There's all kinds of different options here, but I think there's an opportunity to get your book out there before it's out there. It's in some ways, if you don't use something like that before during the pre-launch phase of your book, you're missing an opportunity to create an event around the release of it. Because we all talk about, when we did Back to Reality, obviously we made this huge, great moment, the day it was coming out. And once the day passed, it's like, oh, okay, now the hard work begins and just trying to promote it. And there's no deadline to get people excited and engaged about the book coming out. So Unbound or Kickstarter type campaigns give us that opportunity to have almost like a double launch in some ways.
Yeah. You're building a readership, you're building a community who take ownership of it. And they're there all banging the drum for you on day one. But I love what Emma said. She was talking about the fact that, she's written this book about these incredible women, but she's discovered that blokes are reading it and enjoying it. And it's gone beyond, the readership that she conceived of, which is where I think you get that fantastic momentum and word of mouth. And so much of that has to do, with the wonderful characters, but also the language that she's using, that she's writing us in this vernacular, which is so important. Because as I said, we're all on the Unbound Authors Facebook group, and she was talking about typos, and I was thinking, well, we all get typos, but then I realized, of course, when you're writing in a Scottish vernacular like this, it's so important to get these things right, because what I loved, she said at the end of the interview, she says she's established herself as a voice in the Scots writing community, which again, vitally important for someone who has a passion for that language and that vernacular, and keeping it alive. And that's something that publishers like Unbound do so well.
And it's a huge undertaking. I mean, on top of all the other things that we have to try and do as writers, and an incredible journey and the challenges that we face, writing something very specifically in a certain vernacular, that's a whole other level of superpower, isn't it, if you can pull that off? And it's quite incredible. But like you say, the benefits of doing that is, number one, the book stands out. Number two, you gain momentum within, something you get known for. And that's another thing that a lot of, authors are like, well, what's the one thing that's going to be my kind of thing that people will remember me by? And I'm sure with Emma, that's been a huge benefit to her career as an author as well. One thing that she mentioned, which I found really fascinating, was this idea of the inspiration for the character in the book when she talked about working in a care home many years ago. And it got me thinking, I always think about so many of us are authors. There's many authors that listen to this show. They've got the dream of becoming a full-time author, but they're currently in a full-time job, which either they maybe love, but they'd much rather be at home writing, or they can't stand and they'd very much more like to be at home writing. But it kind of makes me think about a really useful tip if you are in a job and you are, wanting to be a full-time writer, or that's the dream, or even you just want to kind of write more or publish your book. And that is that, take Emma's example of opening your radar and looking for characters at work. Because I think there's a really, whilst we can see kind of like the dead end job that a lot of people might have as like, this is the thing I want to escape from, it might be the very thing that inspires that amazing novel. So I love the idea that she kind of like has based her entire book around this character that she kind of found, got to know maybe at the care home. Have you seen that as well happen a lot in other walks of life, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything like this where, I've got a friend who, again, worked at a care home, and all he would tell me was stories of people that he met. And there is that connection to the past, that very often it's this is the last opportunity to tell the stories of these people. And it's important. I'm doing a thing at the moment where I'm writing a thing for a possible TV thing, and it's sort of based on my childhood. And so I'm having conversations with my dad, and I'm recording them about stuff that we did where we both have a memory. But of course, I was only a kid. He has a much, more vivid memory than maybe I do. And, it keeps those stories alive. And again, if it's something like a particular voice, a vernacular, an accent, and it's even doubly so more important to keep those things, to carry them on. I remember when I worked for Orion, I went to Aberystwyth, to the Otakers there. There was some sort of conference or something, but I got chatting to a guy there who ran a small publisher that published in the Welsh language. And again, it's that thing of keeping that language alive, because, I'm sure Emma feels, as many other people do who are passionate about these languages, these sort of marginalized languages, that if I don't do it, who else will, kind of thing, It's very important, really, really important.
I've got to also just say, Mark, I love the idea that you're recording conversations with your dad. I think that is something everyone should do regardless. But if you've got the excuse of using it because of research for a novel, it makes it a lot easier to do. I just think of another story of a friend of mine who desperately wanted to capture the history of his heritage because his mum had come from a different country. And And she had cancer, so she was in her last days, and it felt for him really challenging to go to her and say, "Mum, can I just kind of like talk about your life story a bit?" Because, this is really important to understand this, it's because he felt like if he asked her that question when she was in that condition, it would be like saying, "Because you're going to die soon." And he didn't want her to lose hope. So this is something that we should all be doing with our relatives, our parents, our grandparents, our aunties, our uncles. Do it as part of your, in quotes, research. I know you are doing it for your research, Mark, but it's such a brilliant idea. Because the other thing is, you might want to do something in 20 years from now, which pulls in. And so you can always do it as research and do it whilst they're with us, whilst they're healthy, because you might end up wanting that or wishing that you had it. And I'm sure a ton of people are probably like saying, "Yeah, I wish I had done that." And so I have a recording actually of my grandfather talking about his whole life story, which is utterly bonkers, stuff I had no idea about. Exactly,
stuff they don't want to talk about, but as they get to their twilight years, they suddenly open up about this stuff, and doesn't matter who you are, everyone's got an extraordinary story to tell.
Completely.
And, this is why it's so important for publishers like Unbound to get voices up there. Actually, I should also mention that Unbound, and this is not to plug Unbound necessarily, but it's just this week they've launched a thing called Unbound Firsts, which is a new imprint for debut writers of color. So again, it's this thing of finding voices of people, and I'll put a link to in the show notes if you want to check it out. Finding the voices of people who might otherwise have been overlooked, or might not even think that they've that a deal is something for them. And there's been a thing in the news as well just this week of a book called Keisha the Sket, which is written by this 13-year-old girl. She first wrote it when she was 13. She got a laptop and she started putting chapters on a social media site called Pixo, and it's all tech speak and London slang. Again, this thing of a language that's new, and it belongs to it is spoken by very narrow sort of range of people, and is completely unique. And it's just amazing and absolutely fascinating.
Brilliant.
It's
fantastic.
Great. Do you want to talk about speech marks?
I was going to say, I want to talk about speech marks, because Alan, this is a big moment for me in that. And because I think you referenced in the interview, Cormac Mccarthy, and that book is sitting on my bedside table right now. And I started reading it randomly last week. And I've got to say, it was really weird reading this book and at first realizing, actually this is dialogue happening and there's no speech marks. And it took me, and then Alan was talking about like how it can actually throw the reader. I was definitely thrown. But this is something that you're really fascinated in, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I read Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian probably about 10 years ago now. And, it's very much in that style. And I think actually with The Road as well, what I think it does is it builds such an intimate relationship between the father and son, getting rid of all the speech marks and all of that. It makes it almost like a psychic connection that they have. But yeah, lots of writers have done it. E.L. Doctorow, Cormac McCarthy, Sally Rooney, whose book Beautiful World, Where Are You? I mean, it's already one of the biggest books of the year. She does
it's a phenomenon, isn't it?
And E.L. Doctorow said that if a writer knows what they're doing, then the reader can tell when it's dialogue. And McCarthy says he prefers not to block the page up with weird little marks, So it's a stylistic choice. And Alan is brilliant. And again, you pick up his book, and page one, it's completely absorbing. It just has this flow. It just gives it this flow that just draws you completely in, and it's completely hypnotic. And again, it's that thing of a voice. He has book one, he has this incredibly vivid, unique voice that no one else has. And that's the sign of a great writer, I think. As Doctorow says, if they know what they're doing, you can tell when it's dialogue. And with Alan's book, you can definitely tell that. And it's brilliantly done.
And you've been so inspired by this as well. You've created a new course on the Academy very much around this whole area, which is fantastic.
We have these monthly coaching sessions, and someone on the Academy said, I'd love to know, more about formatting dialogue. And there are kind of rules, principles to formatting dialogue. And I did a whole thing on that, but I thought, we've got to include a whole section on the fact that actually you don't need to do this. You don't need to do this. You can just go in and let it flow and have fun and experiment with that.
And I think it's fascinating because if you think about it, our entire educational upbringing, imagine if you had written a creative short story in fourth year at your secondary school or in grade 8 and you had no speech marks. You know what would happen, wouldn't you? You'd come back with this, you'd just be red pen and it'd be like, blah, blah, blah. But I love the fact that you can break the rules.
You know what? Alan's an English teacher. I should have asked him about that. If he does that thing of, the curriculum says you've got to do this and he marks them down and he goes, hang on, the child goes, I've got your book. You don't do it.
Yeah. Maybe. Well, he did say that they're bringing it in and getting him to sign it. Maybe that's why he actually wrote that way, because none of his kids were using speech marks. And he thought, well, if you can't beat them, join. I love it. I think it's great because it's part of the thing. Reason why we do this podcast is to learn about the rules and then learn about how you can break them as well. And really coming to this conclusion that we have is that there are rules to guide us. There are principles to guide us. But you do you, right? If you want to try something different, if you want to stand out from the crowd, if you want to not use speech marks, then play with it, because sometimes it can make you stand out a bit. And obviously books get published that don't follow what are those books called where you get the guidelines? These big fat thick books that you I'm trying to think of one. There's one in the US that I saw the other day, and it's like, it literally tells you exactly how to write everything perfectly. And
you get style guides like the Chicago Manual.
Chicago Manual. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's always a red flag for me. If anyone on any sort of writers group goes, well, the Chicago Style Manual says, and it immediately gets my back up for some reason, because it's, there are rules. These aren't hard and fast rules. These are principles. These, just get your voice out there. Like say, with this, with Emma, with Alan, and this Keisha the Sketbook, and all these kind of books that have this unique style. It's just about telling stories. It's not about don't obey the rules. Tell a story.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things that Emma and Alan both talked about was the idea of how tiring a crowdfunding exercise is, those 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But the thing that I'll say that I do pick up, I know you've gone through it, I've worked with a lot of people that have done it as well. What I have found is that regardless of how hard it is, they never regret having done it. It's always something, because the amount that you learn by going through that is something that you take with you for the rest of your life, and it's an achievement as well. I mean, anything that's high pressured, there's always a counter to that, which is that you get a lot from it when you do it. I remember us, the exhilaration of launching our book and doing that big build up. It was a lot of work, but man, it felt so good, didn't it, to have achieved it. It's like a thing you notch up on your life achievements. I did this, and you must have felt that, Mark, as well when you did it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It reminded me, when I was 15, I did the London to Brighton bike race, and I was physically fit then, not like now, And I remember going up and down the South Downs telling myself, never allow yourself to be talked into this ever again. It's a proud achievement, but, done. Never doing it again,
I love the fact that we've done this podcast for 5 years, and only 6 months ago we both worked out we worked in a bookshop. I also did the London to Brighton.
Did you?
And I'm going to prove it, because do you remember that hill?
Oh, God, yes.
The hill?
Yeah.
Do you know what they did when I did it?
That was when I said it.
Exactly. I was halfway up that hill and going, I'm never going to do this again. It was ridiculous. And do you know what was super amazing? It was a kind of a quite a hot sunny day, which wasn't super amazing when you're doing the London to Brighton bike ride, because that is hard work when you've got the sun beating down. But some brilliant entrepreneur was at the very, very, very top of that hill. And for people that haven't done this, this is a mammoth hill. I don't know I can't remember how long it took to get up, and it's when you're really dead, like you really, like, you want a bit of just like coasting, but no, then you have to do this hill. But at the top of this hill was a guy with an ice cream truck. And, whoever it was that did that, I thank them, because that's what got me up there. It absolutely did. Mr. Whippy, 99 Flake, all the way. And all the pubs along the way as well. Like, I wasn't 15 when I did it. I was slightly older. I think I was about in my 20s. But there were lots of pubs along the way, which were absolutely hysterical, because you barely get into the kind of main front door for bikes lying everywhere. It's like bike Armageddon. But they did good business that day.
And if anyone writes in saying, hang on, how could you do it when you were 15? We weren't doing it officially. We just mingled with everyone on Clapham Common. Yeah, we didn't have the official badges or anything. We just mingled with everyone in Clapham Common, and off we went. It was me, Tim Jesse, Phil Saunders, I think Jeremy might have done it as well. I nearly caused a pile up as well. It's some...
Oh, tell us your horrendous biking stories as well, and maybe there's a book in that, Mark. There's books. We've interviewed lots of people who've done sporting events and written novels about that, but maybe there's a book in the London to Brighton. I'm sure there's one out there. Brilliant stuff. Now, as we always like to do, we're in the process of. We're putting out an episode with Mark Hood about Academy All-Stars, but we're also doing this new feature called Spotlight, which is where we pick an author in the Academy who is doing great things with their book. And this week is none other than the wonderful Kel Shaw. Kel joined the Academy from Australia. She's in Sydney. This is kind of like a global academy that we have. And she's a business analyst who is obviously, I've been down the pub before I did this, is currently working on her first book of her urban fantasy series, The Vestige World Chronicles. And Kel is telling us all about the launch of her standalone book called Final Night. Mark, do you want to give us an overview about Final Night?
Trailer voice. Okay. So it says, my current work is a standalone prequel to the upcoming series. It's called Final Night. Freshly risen from the grave, Luki has 12 hours to avenge her death. If only she could remember who did it. And if the monster hunter chasing her doesn't kill her first. Now, that whets your appetite. It's going to be free from Kel's website by the time this goes live. So go to kelshaw.com to get your free book there. And if you love a bit of immersive urban fantasy, you're going to absolutely love it.
Absolutely.
Perfect for Halloween.
And Kel has been an absolute superstar on the Academy, encouraging other writers and focusing on it. And this is one of the brilliant things that's come from it. She said that after getting years of frustration with sprawling, never-ending epics, she focused on writing an urban fantasy series that combines her love of epic fantasy with the mystery of noir and of urban fantasy. While they'll be the same protagonist from book to book, each one will have a standalone mystery or thriller story. So if that has whetted your appetite, do go and check out her website, kelshaw.com. And it's actually launched today, the 25th of October, if you're listening to this on the day the podcast comes out, which happens to also be, Mr. Stay, my birthday. So it's a very special day. So thank you, Kel, for picking that special day. And I will be getting over to your website, as I'm actually going to take the day off. I take the day off for my birthday. It's a thing I do for all my kids and me. And I'm just going to enjoy reading a book, which is something I don't get to do as much as I wish I could. So brilliant. So congratulations, Shell, and congratulations on your spotlight. And if you would also like to get a spotlight on the Academy, then check out the Academy, academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. Brilliant stuff, Mr. Stay. Well, listen, good luck with all of your amazing things that are happening the next couple of weeks. You've got quite the schedule, sir. We'll have to squeeze in maybe another podcast recording next week. And and do give him my regards to Ben, won't you, Mr. Aronovich, when you see him?
I will. I'll give him a big smack on the lips from you.
And yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I look forward to hearing the many stories that no doubt will come from that. And also, unboxing. When does the unboxing video actually get launched for your new book, Mark? Have you got a date? Did you say it's going out beginning next week?
It should be out by the time this episode goes live. We're currently in post-production. So,
and where can people see that? Where's the best place for me to go to watch that?
Look, it's my social media. I shall be carpet bombing social media with this. So if you just look me up, it'll be there. If it's live by the time this goes out, I'll put a link in the show notes. You can check it out. It'll be, the usual
Brilliant
spots.
Stuff. Brilliant. Yeah. And if you'd like to enter the Back to Reality audiobook competition, it's running until the end of November on the website, bestsellerexperiment.com. and click on the newsletter website link, and you can put your name in there. And Mr. Stay, people on social media can find us in many locations.
They can. Come to find us on Facebook, Bestseller Experiment. Twitter and Instagram is @bestsellerxp. Come to the website, bestsellerexperiment.com. Come and say hello, drop us a line, ask us a question, all those wonderful things.
Brilliant. And to everyone who's thinking of doing NaNoWriMo this year, it's a few days away, you're obviously warming up, stretching. You're absolutely bonkers. And we wish you the best of Bestseller Experiment luck with it all. And we hope that you absolutely smash your word count. So good luck to everyone undertaking that. And for everyone else who's doing the 200-word challenge, again, 200wordchallenge.com. All right, Mr. Stay, thank you so much. And have a great week. Have a great writing week. And we'll see you this time next week. All the best. It's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a goodbye from Mark 2.
Goodbye.